The courtroom fell silent. The fans were stunned. And the industry was left speechless because YNW Bortlen just made a move no one ever saw coming. After years of whispers, endless speculation, and a trial that had hip-hop fans glued to every headline, Bortlen shocked the world with a sudden plea deal that changes everything. This wasn't just another legal twist. This was the kind of moment that flips the script, rewriting not only his future, but also the entire narrative surrounding the YNW crew. For the longest time, Bortlen stood tall as the quiet one, the loyal soldier, the man who held it down while others took the spotlight. But with this deal, he's no longer just standing in the background, he's at the center of a storm. Fans can't stop asking questions. Did he fold under the pressure? Did he make the deal to save himself? Or is there a bigger play in motion that we can't yet see? What makes this twist even more explosive is how sudden it was. No leaks, no hints, no warning, just one shocking courtroom moment that instantly sets social media on fire. One side says it's betrayal. The other says it's survival. But one thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same. Tonight, we dive deep into the shocking plea deal, the fallout shaking the hip-hop world, and why YNW Bortlen's decision has fans questioning everything they thought they knew. The energy inside the courtroom that day was electric. Everyone had come expecting another drawn-out hearing, another round of motions, another delay in a case that already felt like it had gone on forever. But instead, the unexpected happened. YNW Bortlen, usually calm and collected, stood before the judge and entered a plea deal that no one had seen coming. The moment the words left his lips, the room fell into stunned silence. Even those closest to the case couldn't believe it. The man who had been painted as unwavering, the man who had stood firm for so long, had just made the most controversial move of his life. For years, Bortlen's story had been tied to loyalty. Fans knew him as the one who stood beside YNW Melly when everything came crashing down. He wasn't the flashy one. He wasn't the star of the show. But he was always there, solid and unshaken. That loyalty became part of his identity. But with one plea, that entire image cracked. Suddenly, people were left questioning everything they thought they knew about him. Was that loyalty real, or had it all just been an illusion waiting to collapse under pressure? The news spread like wildfire. Within minutes, blogs had posted breaking alerts. Twitter was a frenzy of memes, theories, and outrage. Instagram flooded with lives and stories, dissecting every angle of the plea. Some fans defended him fiercely, insisting he had no other choice. You don't know what kind of pressure he was under, one post read. Others, however, were quick to label him as someone who had broken the code, someone who folded when it mattered most. And in hip-hop, perception is everything. Once the idea of betrayal attaches itself to your name, it's almost impossible to shake. Bortlen's decision wasn't just about a courtroom myth, it was about the court of public opinion. And in that court, the verdict was swift and brutal. What fueled the fire even more was the secrecy. No one had expected this deal. There had been no leaks, no whispers, nothing. For months, insiders had claimed that Bortlen would ride it out, that he was too loyal to ever consider such a move. And then, without warning, he flipped the script. That kind of shock doesn't just create headlines, it creates suspicion. Fans and critics alike wanted to know what exactly was in that plea deal. Who did it protect? And what did Bortlen give up in exchange for his own survival? Speculation ran wild. Some believed he had struck a deal to save himself, cutting ties with everyone else in the process. Others suggested it was part of a larger strategy, that he was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. He didn't fold, one fan argued. He just made the smartest move possible. But in the world of hip-hop, where loyalty is considered sacred, those arguments didn't stop the backlash. The whispers of betrayal grew louder, and Bortlen's name became a lightning rod for debate. What made the situation even messier was how the industry reacted. Fellow rappers who had once shown support for Bortlen began to go quiet. Some unfollowed him on social media. Others dropped subtle shots in their lyrics, mocking the idea of loyalty and hinting that Bortlen had traded it away. Rivals seized the opportunity, using his name as a punchline, painting him as someone who talked tough in his music, but couldn't back it up when it mattered most. Through it all, Bortlen himself stayed silent. No statements, no interviews, no posts, just silence. And sometimes, silence says more than words ever could. The lack of explanation allowed everyone else to create their own version of the truth. To his fans, it made him look like someone who was taking the smart route, protecting his energy and focusing on the bigger picture. To his critics, it made him look guilty, like he had something to hide. For the YNW brand, the impact was immediate. Their legacy was already under a microscope, but this deal threw gasoline on the fire. Fans began questioning not just Bortlen, but the entire crew. What did this mean for Melly? What did it mean for the music? Could YNW survive this storm, or had the plea deal marked the beginning of the end? The courtroom decision that day was more than just a legal move. It was a cultural earthquake, shaking the very foundation of what people believed about YNW Bortlen. And while the legal system would take its time, the world outside was already rushing to judgment. In the eyes of many, his story had gone from loyalty to betrayal in the blink of an eye. But the truth, as always, is never that simple. The aftermath of YNW Bortlen's shocking plea deal was nothing short of chaos. The courtroom may have been silent when he uttered those words, but outside, the noise was deafening. Within hours, his name was plastered across every hip-hop blog, gossip page, and news outlet. Some headlines called it a betrayal of the code, while others framed it as the smartest survival move in the game. Either way, everyone had an opinion and no one was staying quiet. For fans, the news felt like a gut punch. Many had supported Bortlen from day one, believing in his loyalty, his silence, and his resilience. To them, he was the backbone of the YNW brand, the one who never crumbled, no matter how bad things got. But now, that image was shattered. Twitter threads lit up with accusations, fans accusing him of folding under pressure, of abandoning everything he once stood for. He talked about loyalty in every track. One fan tweeted, "But when it came down to it, he chose himself." Others pushed back, pointing out that the same people criticizing him had never been in his shoes. "Y'all don't know what it's like when your life is on the line," another fan argued. He made a choice to survive, and if you don't get that, you've never been in the struggle. This split in the fan base only made the story hotter. On one side, anger and disappointment. On the other, empathy and understanding dot the industry. Reaction was just as divided. Some rappers stayed silent, careful not to get caught in the storm. Others, though, saw an opportunity. Diss tracks started dropping almost immediately, with rivals mocking Bortlen for breaking the code and taking the easy way out. Punchlines flew across the internet, clever, cutting, and merciless. For artists who had long envied the attention the YNW crew commanded, this was their chance to step into the spotlight at his expense. Meanwhile, whispers inside the industry painted an even darker picture. Insiders began to suggest that Bortlen's deal wasn't just about himself, that it might have involved giving up information, that he may have cut a bargain that left others exposed. No one knew for sure, but the lack of transparency fueled endless speculation. The more people guessed, the worse the rumors got. In hip-hop, perception often becomes reality, and Bortlen's silence made it easy for his critics to control the narrative. Perhaps the harshest backlash came from within his own circle. People who had once called him family began to distance. themselves. Some posted cryptic messages online, quotes about betrayal and loyalty that didn't mention Bortlen by name but didn't need to. Everyone knew who they were talking about. For the YNW brand, this was poison. The crew that once seemed untouchable now looked fractured. And the plea deal was the crack that exposed everything. Through all of this, Bortlen himself remained a ghost. No interviews, no live streams, no direct explanations. His silence drove fans crazy. Some said he was staying quiet on legal advice. Others believed he didn't have the courage to face the backlash. Either way, his refusal to speak left a vacuum that everyone else was more than happy to fill. Bloggers, rivals, ex-friends, they all crafted their own version of the truth. And each version painted Bortlen in a different light. But even as his reputation took hit after hit, something unexpected began to happen. His name stayed in the headlines. People couldn't stop talking about him. And in the rap game, where visibility is everything, being infamous can sometimes be just as powerful as being beloved. His streams didn't drop, they spiked. People were listening to his old tracks again, dissecting the lyrics for hidden meanings, wondering if he had been dropping hints all along. Suddenly, every bar about loyalty, survival, and betrayal took on a whole new weight. Some fans argued that this was proof he could bounce back. He's controversial now, one blogger wrote, but controversy sells. If he owns this story instead of hiding from it, he could turn it into the biggest comeback we've ever seen. Others weren't so sure, warning that the stain of betrayal in hip-hop culture is almost impossible to wash off. Once you're labeled as someone who took a deal, it follows you forever. The tension only grew when rumors surfaced that Bortlen had new music ready to drop. According to leaks, the tracks weren't polished hits, they were raw, emotional confessions. If true, this was his chance to flip the script, to take the scandal that threatened to destroy him and turn it into art that reminded the world why they cared in the first place. Fans waited eagerly, wondering, would he speak his truth in the booth, or would he stay silent forever? Either way, one thing was certain. YNW Bortlen was no longer just another name in the game. He had become a symbol of the thin line between loyalty and survival, betrayal and strategy, truth and perception. His plea deal didn't just change his life, changed the way fans and the industry looked at him forever. And as the backlash raged on, one question remained. Was this the beginning of the end for YNW Bortlen? Or was it the start of his most powerful chapter yet? As the dust from the courtroom shock began to settle, the question on everyone's lips was simple. What's next for YNW Bortlen? Would he fade into obscurity, forever remembered as the one who broke under pressure? Or would he reclaim his place in the rap game, stronger and more unapologetic than ever? For weeks, the speculation never stopped. Blogs ran daily updates, YouTube channels posted theory after theory, and social media kept his name trending long after the plea deal itself was finalized. But while the world argued, Bortlen was silent, and silence in the rap world is dangerous. Without his voice, everyone else wrote his story for him. Rivals called him weak. Old friends dropped cryptic posts about betrayal, and even loyal fans started to wonder if their faith had been misplaced. It seemed like his career was hanging by a thread, dangling between irrelevance and infamy. Then, just when it looked like the noise was beginning to die down, Bortlen made his move. Out of nowhere, he released a single, dark, haunting track that felt less like music and more like a confession. The beat was stripped back, the lyrics raw and unfiltered. He didn't shy away from the controversy, he embraced it. They call it folding, I call it life, he rapped. I made my choice, I paid my price. The words hit like a thunderclap, cutting through the endless chatter and forcing people to stop and listen. The response was immediate. Within hours, the track had spread across every platform, dissected line by fans desperate to find hidden meanings. Some praised him for his honesty, arguing that he had finally owned his truth instead of hiding behind silence. Others dismissed it as damage control, accusing him of using music as an excuse to dodge responsibility. But regardless of where people stood, one thing was clear: Bortlen was back in the conversation, and this time he was steering it. The single was quickly followed by a full project, a surprise mixtape that dropped without warning. Unlike his earlier work, this wasn't about flashy bars or catchy hooks. It was about pain, betrayal, and survival. Each track felt like a glimpse into his mind, a man caught between the streets that raised him and the system that tried to break him. The mixtape polarized listeners, but it also cemented one thing: YNW Bortlen was no longer just a supporting figure in someone else's story. He was writing his own. The industry reaction was mixed, but undeniable. Labels that had once turned their backs began making quiet calls, curious about whether controversy could translate into profit. Promoters debated whether his name was too risky to put on a flyer or too profitable to ignore. Rival rappers who had mocked him relentlessly now found themselves being drowned out by the sheer volume of conversations surrounding his music. And fans, they were torn. Some couldn't forgive what they saw as betrayal. Others argued that his comeback proved he was more real than ever, that he was willing to expose his flaws instead of hiding behind a false image of perfection. Live shows became the ultimate test when Bortlen announced his first performance. Since the plea deal, no one knew what to expect. Would the crowd boo him off the stage? Or would they chant his name louder than ever? The answer came the moment he stepped out, mic in hand, under the blinding stage lights. The crowd erupted, not in anger, but in thunderous cheers. Whatever else people said about him, one fact remained: controversy made him unforgettable. And in hip-hop, being unforgettable is the key to survival. From that moment on, it became clear that the plea deal hadn't ended Bortlen's career, had transformed it. He was no longer just a rapper climbing the charts. He was a symbol, a lightning rod for debates about loyalty, betrayal, and the cost of survival. Fans might argue about his choices for years to come, but they couldn't deny the impact. His story became bigger than music hit, became a lesson in the messy, complicated realities of fame. Looking back, the courtroom decision that once seemed like the end turned out to be a turning point. It stripped away the image of Bortlen as untouchable and replaced it with something raw, messier, but ultimately more human. He was no longer just the quiet soldier in someone else's narrative. He was the survivor who stood alone, flawed but unbroken. And while some fans still whisper about betrayal, others see him as proof that resilience can rise from even the darkest moments. One thing is certain: YNW Bortlen's sudden plea deal did change everything. But instead of destroying him, it gave him the chance to rewrite his story. Whether you call it survival or selling out, one fact is undeniable: his name will never be forgotten. The story of YNW Bortlen has taken twists no one could have predicted, from loyalty to betrayal, from silence to confession, from courtroom shock to a comeback that shook the entire hip-hop world. What started as a plea deal that many thought would end his career has instead sparked one of the most heated debates the culture has ever seen. Was his choice an act of weakness, or was it the ultimate survival move in a game where the rules are written to break you? Now, the question isn't just about Bortlen's past hits, about his future. Can he rebuild the trust of his fans? Can he stand tall in an industry where perception is everything? Or will this plea deal forever define him as the one who folded under pressure? The rap world is watching closely, and every move he makes from here on out will either cement his downfall or solidify his place as one of the most controversial survivors in the game. But now, it's over to you. What do you think about YNW Bortlen's decision? Was it betrayal, or was it the only way out of an impossible situation? Do you believe he can come back stronger, or has the damage already been done? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Want to hear from you, and don't forget, if you want to keep up with every twist, every reveal, and every shocking turn in stories like this, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video with your crew, because the saga is far from over.